Buffalo Bills beat the odds and make the biggest comeback win in NFL history. Good evening, I'm Miles Hairston. Rich Newberg has the night off. Our top story tonight, it was the tale of two halves out at Rich Stadium, and it had a very happy ending if you're a Bills fan. Chuck Howard joins me now to talk about one of the greatest moments in Buffalo sports history. Chuck, what a game.
Have it come down yet?
Oh, no. No way, it'll take a while.
You know, I stuck with the Bills the entire way. For end of the first half, I knew they'd do it just like you. Hey, not just the greatest comeback in NFL playoff history, but try the greatest comeback in NFL history, period. The Bills rallied from a 32-point third-quarter deficit to down the Oilers 41-38 in overtime. The Bills stay alive and now face the Steelers next week in Pittsburgh. As Miles said, it basically was a tale of two halves, plain and simple. Unfortunately, many of you folks didn't have a chance to see the game because of the television blackout, but with some help from my buddy Van Miller, who did the game on WGR Radio, we'll relive this baby hand in hand. 75,000 Bills fans did manage to make it out to Rich Stadium this afternoon, and they were stunned early on as the Oilers managed back-to-back 80-yard drives. Warren Moon to Haywood Jeffries to get the scoring going early in the first quarter.
Moon waiting for the snap, drops back, looks, fakes once, now starts to run, now throws, touchdown! He got him in the end zone.
A 3-yard pass from Moon to Jeffries. It was 7-0 Oilers after a 9-minute, 9-second, 80-yard drive. The Bills did manage their only points of the first half. Late in the first quarter, Christie, a 36-yard field goal. It was Oilers 7, Bills 3 after one quarter, but then came quarter number 2.
Here's the pass coming up, looking to the end zone, and it is caught for the touchdown by Webster Slaughter, I believe.
Moon 7 yards to Slaughter, another 80-yard drive that took 7 minutes, 25 seconds. It was a 14-3 game. And then the next possession by the Oilers, Moon again, his third touchdown pass on the day, this time Curtis Duncan on the receiving end.
As time throws, and it is caught for the touchdown. What a reception downfield.
Late second quarter, and Moon would hit Jeffries, this time 27 yards, and it was 28-3 Oilers at the break. The second half, unfortunately, began where it left off for the Bills in the first half.
And incomplete, and intercepted and taken away by the Oilers. Down the left sideline goes Bubba McDowell, and McDowell runs into the end zone for the touchdown. The ball went through
Bubba McDowell, a 58-yard return of the Frank Reich interception, and it was 35-3 Oilers, but then the comeback began.
Davis running left, trying to get to the corner flag, and he is in for the touchdown. So the Bills have finally
Kenneth Davis around the left side for a 1-yard touchdown, and it was 35-10. The Bills get the ball back, and they put it in the end zone again.
Sails it long, all alone. Beebe at the 10, at the 5, in for the touchdown. John Beebe was wide open, a blown assignment there.
Reich 38 yards to Beebe following a successful onside kick, and it was 35-17. Bills next possession, and Reich does it again.
Reed at the 5, in for the touchdown. Andre Reed has scored.
Reich on the mark, 26 yards to Reed. It was 35-24, and the Bills were down by just 11 with over 4.5 minutes to go in the third.
There's the snap. He backs up. He looks. He throws. Reed, touchdown. Reed for the touchdown. Unbelievable. The Bills are back.
Following a Henry Jones interception on a 4th and 5, Reich hit Reed from 18 yards out. It was 35-31 after 3 quarters.
He looks, he throws, touchdown! Andre Reed for the touchdown!
Reich 17 yards to Reed, and the Bills had their first lead of the day, 38-35 with 3:08 to go in the fourth quarter. But the Oilers come back at a 26-yarder from Al Del Greco with 15 seconds to go in regulation. We go to overtime. So it was tied at 38 into overtime. The Oilers win the toss, but then Warren Moon, one pass too many. Nate Odom steps in front of this one at the 37, a 2-yard return, and the Bills are in business. Enter Steve Christie to win it.
32 yards from the center of the field. Adam Lingner ready to snap it back. It's 38-all. Bills can win it here. Reich puts it down. The kick is on the way, and it is good. And the Bills have won it. The Bills have won it. The Bills have won it. They win it 41-38. Incredible. What a comeback by the Bills.
And the fans are all over the field.
Absolutely incredible. This place is pandemonium.
Look at the fans pouring onto the field, and the
lead.
Let's go down to the locker room, Mark. Boy, the Bills trailed this game 35-3.
They come back in the second.
And the Bills win it, as Vance said, 41-38 in overtime. And hey, Marv Levy, you never know.
Steve, you watched that a gazillion times. You watched it here. You listened to this crowd reaction. They applaud. This occurred a few years ago. What's your reaction when you see it for the gazillion time?
Well, this may be one of the first times where I wasn't nervous. Because that was my first playoff game, too. So, and I came from Tampa, where we were 6-10 and then 3-13. I was lucky to escape and come up here, but when you go from a team that's almost like the semi-pros to a team that's going to the Super Bowl every year, you expect to go to the playoffs, but at halftime, I certainly didn't expect that we were going to continue. And I always remember Darryl Talley running through the locker room, telling everybody it's not over and we can do it. And I remember everybody in our rows saying, okay, he's really lost it this time.
Well, I assume you assumed that he had lost it right after that first play in the third quarter when you thought maybe there might be some chance, but my gosh.
Well, no, I mean, I think at the end of the day, we wanted to be respectable. We were getting blown out, and you really want to... the fans could have left at halftime. I know a lot of people did, and then as it turns out, you know, Dave and I were joking last night that about 500,000 people were there. You know, so, but yeah, it was a crazy game, but deep down, Frank certainly knew that it wasn't over, and a couple of big plays, and we were back into it.
Did you get a sense, as things were swinging along, was it a Marv Levy? What was there a turning point, a tipping point, where you said, "Yeah, God darn it, I think we can do this"?
Well, a couple of big plays. You know, Andre was in the end zone 3 times. Beebe, Kenny Davis ran well, but you needed big plays. We had a couple of interceptions. Henry Jones and Nate Odoms came up with the one in overtime. In a game like that, when you're down by so much, big plays have to happen. You have to force turnovers, and that's what happened.
So this is your first playoff game. This is your first year with the Bills. Prior to that, with Tampa Bay. And prior to that, I suppose you even had to struggle as to whether you wanted to be a football player or a soccer player. How'd you ultimately decide?
I got to the point where I was 18 and was playing with the Canadian junior team. And back then, it's actually, unfortunately, it's pretty similar to what it is today in Canada, where there's not the same support that you get in the States for various sports. And I think they made us see great athletes, which kind of narrowed it down to having to attend McMaster University in Hamilton, that's where we trained, and try to find a job. And so I decided that maybe football is going to be a better way to go. And I have to say that since most of you are lawyers, a lot of people don't know this. My grandfather was a judge. He's passed away now, and beating his gavel over my head, I can still feel it. And my uncle's a judge in Toronto, and my cousin's a corporate lawyer in Toronto, and I'm the black sheep who decided to play a game for a living. So to be here, it's either good company or bad company. It's all family. So it's,
You can decide when it's over.
That's right.
Draft day comes along. You're basically Canadian. How did that work? How did that work? How did you even know you were going to become an NFL football player?
I thought originally that that partway through my career at William & Mary, I thought maybe the CFL.
Yeah.
There would be an opportunity there, and after my last year, I was drafted by Edmonton in the first round and 6th overall, and I thought this is going to be big money. Not the case. I think they offered $10,000 a sign and a 60 base, and the minimum in the NFL at the time was about 70. So I thought, well, I'll take my chances. And I was called and worked out by a number of teams before the NFL draft, and the whole first day went by, and this was 12 rounds back then. So at the 10th round, Tampa calls me, who I didn't even know they were looking, said, yeah, we want to draft you in the 12th round. And I thought, well, okay, it's not looking too good. Then the draft finished, and then the phone didn't ring for about another hour, and then Tampa said, we would like you to come down tomorrow. I said, okay, fine. And I was kind of intimidated because, you know, William & Mary, we probably had 12,000 at our games, and not a big football factory. And just walking in the locker room in Tampa, and Vinny Testaverde was there, and just some other big-name players at the time. And Ray Perkins was the head coach, who came from Alabama, and basically got right in my face and said, "You don't have to kick a ball, we want to sign you." And I just said, with my pen, "Oh, okay." And that was the end of it. I was a Buccaneer, and for 2 years.
During that 2-year period, the team didn't have much success. That may be an overstatement, but how'd you end up being a Bill?
Back then, they had the Plan B free agency system that allowed you to protect 32 or 33 players on your roster, and everyone else could basically go into the market. But what Tampa was doing was protecting 32 or 33 guys, some of those players being ones on the bubble, some of the guys that they would want down the road. And then they were doing deals under the table to stay. So I said, this could be lucrative, this may work out for us. And they offered 10 grand, which wasn't really what I had in mind when I heard that the other guys were getting 50 or 100. And so I said, well, okay. And I was, all pro my first year and the team MVP, and they want to give me 10 grand. I said, okay. I said, I will stay. But if somebody drops Fort Knox in my driveway, I'm out of here. Well, that day, Bill Polian called and said, we're sending you your ticket, you're coming. And I said, well, I have a deal with Tampa. And he started laughing. He said, like I said, your ticket's in the mail and you're coming up. And I stayed for a while.
When you thought about the Bills while you were a Buccaneer, what was your impression of the Bills at the time?
Well, Mark Kelso, I knew a lot about Mark. We were fraternity brothers at William and Mary, even though we didn't actually get to play together. And Marv actually had coached at William and Mary, so there's that connection there. But also the fact that 2 Super Bowls already on the record was certainly intriguing, to say the least. And just the opportunity to come home and play for, I grew up in Oakville, Ontario, and if there was going to be an NFL team that was home, it was Buffalo, and I think that was another selling point. And I knew that Scott Norwood was getting on in years, and although he had a pretty decent year the year before I got there, I think they were ready for a change, and a lot of that was on the kickoff. So that's really, I think the difference at minicamp.
During minicamp, was Norwood still there? Was there
Yes.
sort of there was a competition going on?
Yeah, but I could tell that he just didn't have the pop in his leg, and I could also kind of see in his helmet, and it wasn't there anymore.
Mm-hmm. How much of the wide right impact? Did he talk to you about that at all?
Not then.
Yeah.
Not then. We play in a golf tournament together every year in Rochester for Camp Good Days, and I've certainly been able to catch up with him then. But he's such a quiet, classy guy, and he's very well received. And I thought he handled the whole thing with such class. And compared to what we see, some of the guys in the NFL that have success, how they act. And Scott handled, the one kick. He had a great career, and people remember the one kick, and I think that's the downside of the job, not just for Scott, but for every kicker. But the way he handled it, the way he carried himself, that's always sort of stuck with me too.
Well, you're a class act, and yet you didn't make every kick. How does one, as a kicker, psychologically walk through the ups and downs of your profession?
Well, I knew coming to Buffalo that I was going to make a lot less than I did in Tampa. When the wind picks up and the snow comes in, you're going to miss. And the only thing you can do is forget about it. Wipe the slate clean and come back and make the next one. And I think that knowing that I was going to have some failure, it would bring about some success too.
You guys had a tremendous amount of success, and to play a little bit of a word association with some players, because I think they're all interested in that. Let me just drop a few names who were teammates, like Jim Kelly. What was your impression?
Jim was kind of quarterback that you really don't see too much anymore, because Jim would get in the huddle and he would, if you didn't run the right route or you missed a block, he'd say, hey, you missed, and you need to do this and pick it up, you're letting us down. Whereas we've had other quarterbacks in Buffalo that get the call, they come in, they call it, whether it was good or bad, and that's the way it ends. But Jim got after everybody, and he was a real leader. And a quarterback in the NFL has to do that. And of course, when you're good enough that you can make your own calls anyway and then change them, the offense is yours. And that's what I like. If you're going to give your quarterback the reins and let him do it, and Jim could do it.
Frank Reich.
Frank was a class act all the way. Obviously, we all know he's very religious, but he sort of, that worked for him in a sense that he just fought through everything and had the faith that it was going to turn out. Houston game, prime example. And a lot of people don't realize that he also played very well against Pittsburgh the following week in Pittsburgh and had a heck of a game. It's sort of overshadowed by the Houston game, but he was arguably the best second-string quarterback ever.
Thurman Thomas. Once he found his helmet.
What a character. And I'll lump him with a couple other guys.
Okay.
Now, back then we had a Friday afternoon club at the Big Tree Lounge, and Marv knew about it. 20 or 30 guys would run over there, and we'd just have probably an hour or so after practice and just hang out. Well, Saturday morning was flu day for some of the guys. But we knew that despite the fact that they couldn't make it off the training table Saturday morning, somebody was going to pay Sunday afternoon. And that was sort of the thing back then, where they were just nasty on Sunday. Not just Thurman, but quite a few of them. And it worked. Things are different now. Things are very different now, and it's more of it's even more so of a business than it was back then. But the team was very, very tight. We did a lot of things together, and we were smart about things too. You didn't really read about too many of us on the wrong side of the news, and that was because of Marv. And everybody had a great deal of respect for him and each other, and that chemistry. It's hard to have that over and over again. I think New England's the closest team to do it.
Andre Reed.
Andre was the best wide receiver run after catch. He would take those terrible routes across the middle where nobody wanted to go. There's always a pocket of about 2 or 3 yards in behind the defensive line and the linebackers, and he would get right in the middle of it and more often than not catch everything and then still make yards after. Really strong, tremendous athlete.
Don Beebe.
He could fly. He could really fly, and that was, nobody really expected it. He wasn't a big guy. He was strong, and once he got outside, he was gonna beat them.
Steve Tasker.
Best special teams player ever, and 7-time Pro Bowler, Pro Bowl MVP. That's probably my wife.
Or Thurman Thomas.
That's right.
Wondering if you're going to drop the other names of the guys.
No. But that whole group collectively really special, and again, it was Marv and the coaching staff he put together.
Bruce Smith.
Bruce was a specimen. He just a freak, as it were. He was so strong and quick and so athletic for a guy that big and tough, and he could get it done week in and week out.
Darryl Talley.
Darryl, well, he was our cheerleader. Ran through the locker room at halftime against Houston, said it's not over. He was a character too, and really a hard-nosed player, smart player. Again, that was a great core guys there on the defense too.
6 months ago, we had your trainer extraordinaire, one of the great storytellers, Eddie Abramowski. And he told some stories about you, Steve. Maybe you can tell a story about him.
I don't know. What did he tell about me?
You'll have to watch the tape.
All right. No, he was great. The joke was, though, if you had anything wrong with you that wasn't serious, they'd just tape a bag of ice on you and tell you to get out, give you a pill or something. But he was really good. He was old school. He was the old school kind of trainer where, I heard this, I heard that, and they probably would tape an aspirin to your knee and tell you to get out there. Take the shot, whatever. It was good. It was good, though.
One of our claims to fame here in the area is Shane Conlon. What's your impression of Shane?
Shane was, well, they always made fun of him because he had really skinny legs. I don't know if anybody knows that, but but he was a really tough player. Penn State, right? I only played, I think, 1 or 2 years with him, but he was a character too. And everybody was so close. It didn't matter how old you were or how many years you had in the league. You got to know everybody pretty well, and he was certainly a fan favorite as well.
Often overlooked is the offensive line, and Kent Hull and company. First of all, probably if you refresh our recollections as to who was your offensive line at the time.
Wow, it changed so much. But Kent Hall, of course, was in there, and House Ballard. Unfortunately, House went to Seattle and was injured there. But Mitch Farrat, who's passed away now, he was on there. Tight end Pete Metzelars. He was always about 250 pounds and still cut and fit and could catch the ball. I mean, we had a pretty decent offensive line. Then some of the younger guys came in, John Fina, Jerry Ostrowski, Mike Devlin, a bunch of guys came in that were there for Reuben Brown, of course. A lot of good players back then that started to take over for guys like Kent when they left.
Was Richard there?
Yes, Jim Richard, yeah, another great player.
You live in a world by yourself as a place kicker. And during the game, what do you do?
Well, there's a trailer. A lot of people don't know that, but there's a trailer outside the stadium. And Chris Moore and I would have popcorn and soda. And we had a speaker in there, and Marv would have a special mic and say, "All right, boys, you're on. It's third down. Get ready." So we'd run back in. They'd have a security guy come out and get us. And that's what we did. It felt like that though at times. The only advantage of being a kicker or a punter in Buffalo is that we always had a good spot by the heater because we never really had to get up that much. We never lose our seat. So those cold games you had to know where the blowers were.
You had me going there for a second.
Okay.
Did I miss that trailer?
All right, we didn't have a TV in the trailer.
But seriously, as you obviously know what's going on an ongoing basis, and then mentally you can kind of visualize, all right, we've got 70 yards to go, and we need 3 points for the tie or the win. Do you really kind of gear it up then? Mentally, do you?
I really like the pressure. I love the pressure, and that's what really made the game special. The 33-yarders at the beginning of the game, who cares? But when things sort of were, like you said, 70 yards to go, we needed to tie, we needed to win. I loved the pressure. I loved being sent out there to get the job done and finish it.
Now, Frank was pretty much your holder during that time period?
Frank, Chris Moore, Steve Tasker, whoever was available. I remember our first game against the Giants one year. Steve was my holder all camp and decided to break his thumb. So I looked at Chris Moore and I said, "What are you doing right now?" And he goes, "I'll hold. I don't care. I'll hold." So he stayed probably for about 5 years.
We just see the ball go through the uprights and everybody screams and yells, but obviously there's a lot of technique to this. When the center's snapping it back, how does the receiver want to receive it, or how does the holder want to receive it to put it down? What's the technique there?
Just like in Ace Ventura, laces out. That helps. You never want to hit the laces because it hurts. It really does, especially on those cold days. But you basically give the center a target, and you catch the ball in with your left hand first. You guide it with your right hand. Sorry, guide it with your left. And then if you need to spin it to get the laces around, that's what you do. But I was pretty quick, so I didn't. I had a lot of confidence in my holders, and they didn't have to do a whole lot of work. I said, just put the ball down, get it straight up. I don't need anything elaborate. Just get it down there. Because, like I said, in Buffalo with the wind and everything, it didn't really matter how good of a hold it was. You just had to get it up there and hit it hard enough to get it through.
Us older folks here remember Darryl Talley during the Super Bowl. It all gets fouled up. Snaps the ball, pretends to throw it. Did you ever have an experience like that?
No. I've missed a few tackles though. I'll say that. Missed a couple blocks on fake field goals, but I was a punter in college as well. We had a fake in every year. We had a really neat fake, and they never let me do it. That probably because they knew, the ball would end up behind me.
So if you had to fill in this sentence, the funniest thing that ever happened to Steve Christie was, what would you say?
The first time I met Dave Burns. No, I don't know. Today's a big day for me. My favorite soccer team, Glasgow Celtic, are taking on Manchester United this afternoon. And I used to go to Scotland a lot to watch the games, and pretty much every trip had a certain amount of hilarity, because in Glasgow you've got a mix of the staunch Irish Republicans, the Scots Presbyterians, and a few other people thrown in there, and they all hate each other. But the stories were great. I mean, the banter that you get over there, and again, the most hilarious thing was probably my first game, and just taking in the Catholic Protestant football game, and then watching the game on the field, because there was two of them, and it was really something.
You retired as a Bill. You went from Buffalo, and probably not under the most pleasant of circumstances, ended up being a New York Giant. But you chose to come back and be a Bill for a day to end your career there. How did that all happen?
Well, I was trying to do it when Marv was still here, and Marv left a little bit early, and just because I had so much respect for him that I wanted to do it when he was still here. The problem is the NFL sets it up where you have to release someone. So you have to be in a part of the off season where you're prepared to let someone go for a day. So we worked it out where last February I was able to come in and sign for a day. And in fact, it was the first day I met Dick Geron and introduced myself, and I said, I'm just going to tell you right now, I'm not coming to practice, I'm not going to any meetings, and tomorrow I'm out of here.
So it's sort of like your Friday night club where those guys that just didn't appear Saturday.
Yeah, that's right.
Why was it important?
Well, because growing up in Oakville, and my wife's from Buffalo, her family's always been longtime Bills fans, and this is our home. We live in Niagara-on-the-Lake in Ellicottville, New York, and the fan support from Southern Ontario and Western and Upstate New York has been outstanding, and home is home. And I love my years here in Buffalo, and really love the fans and the support. There was really no other option.
Earlier today there was a presentation by the folks from the Chautauqua Region Community Foundation and BWB and Vineyard Group for Camp Good Days, which we thank you for doing that.
Yes, thank you very much.
Why Camp Good Days?
Scott Norwood was donating money for every field goal that he made. Mm-hmm. And Denny Lynch, who was head of PR with the Bills at the time, came in and said, would you like to carry that on? And I said, I'd love to. It really wasn't, didn't take too long to come back with that answer, and I continued that. Even when I left the Bills and went to San Diego and New York, I continued to do the same thing. And now my wife and I still want to be part of Camp Good Days and Special Times, so she heads a 5K in Ellicottville, and raises pretty close to about $5,000 every year for the camp. And then events like this, I'm able to tack on a little bit more, so we're almost where we were when I was playing. And Camp Good Days and Special Times started out as a camp for kids with cancer, and has really expanded into so many other avenues that they help people and bring in kids from all over the world now. It's on Keuka Lake. It's really a great spot, and with the money that I raised playing, they built an art building. So that was really gratifying for me, that I know the kids could go in there and really experience something that, because a lot of times when you give money to charity, you don't actually see it, you don't know where it's going. But in that case, here's something material that I can look at. And in fact, my oldest daughter, who's 17, she has been volunteering there for 3 years, and she comes back after a week a totally different person.
Well, that's terrific. What do you think about Tim and Betsy Schultz?
Oh, well, I mean, if you're going to work for someone or with someone, and Dave Burns as well, it's been a great relationship, and we've been doing a lot of charity things, kicking camp, and various functions, and it's really been gratifying. I think it's always important, and I tell guys too that when they get out of the league, that it's very important to be in the community, to give something back, and obviously the Schultzes do that. So that's part of the beauty of the relationship.
And they do it. This is not to blow up the glory gun, but they're really one.
Yes.
Terrific corporate citizen. Let me open this up for questions. I have a few Bills fans here. Anybody have any specific questions for Steve? Other than that's a
Oh,
Bigfoot there.
I didn't know there was any of those left.
Another Bigfoot. All right, guys.
Wow.
Yeah, Kim, sure.
When you're place kicking, when do you start to move towards the ball? When the center actually releases it, or when he starts, or what's the timing?
The timing is 1.3 seconds or underneath that. So I was usually about 1.25. Occasionally I'd be about 1.21, and my special teams coach, wherever he may be at the time, would say, okay, it's too quick. But I would leave as soon as the ball basically passed the center's ankles. So that,
Committed, no matter
I'm going. So if the ball's not there, the call's fire, which is the OSHIT call, because then I've got to scramble to block someone, and because I always said to the holder, I'm not picking the ball up, by the way, that's yours. So I have to find someone to block, and he'd have to get up and try to throw it down the field or run, which has always been, that's pretty funny, actually. You see a guy, especially a punter, try to run.
What's your highlight?
Well, the Houston game was a highlight, and I had a field goal in the Super Bowl, a long one in the Super Bowl, and that was another highlight. It was a small consolation to coming up second.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions for Steve? Yeah, Steve.
What's your longest kick?
In a game was 59 against Miami at home, and 71 at Fredonia in camp with a snap and a hold. But I never really, I think I had one chance at a 65-yarder in preseason, but I didn't come close.
71 yards.
There was no wind that day on the 71, by the way. None of that Buffalo wind. Yeah, right.
Yeah, right. Any other specific questions? Yeah, Tim.
Where do you see the University of Buffalo football program in a couple of years?
Well, I think nice question. I think the problem is keeping Turner Gill here. He could go anywhere at any time. He's done a great job of recruiting players. He's developed the program. They've had a couple of close losses this year, and then a couple of really great wins over Temple and Army last weekend. But it's hard to recruit a kid from Florida and California and tell him that you're going to have fun playing football in Buffalo. But he has been able to do that. And I think he really sells a family atmosphere and an opportunity for kids to play, for many of them, right away. Whereas if they went to a bigger school, they'd probably have to sit out for a few years. So that's where Turner Gill can come in and say, you know, I can build my team the way I want to with a lot of younger players. And with that being said, you've got a lot of younger players that are playing now. So in a couple of years, they're going to be your leaders, your juniors and seniors. They should be in great shape. One of the best teams in the MAC.
Peter?
I always felt that the 4 years that the Bills went to the Super Bowl was probably the greatest football that was ever played in the NFL. Do you have any comments on that observation?
Well, I was a soccer player, so as far as football goes, I don't know if it was good or not. We just kept on winning. It was fun. It was certainly fun. I can remember coming back after the AFC Championship game against Miami about 1:30 in the morning, coming out of Pryor, and there were hundreds of people lined on the roadway out to the street and just cheering us on, and that's when it really hit. But how special the fans were and how great those 4 years were.
Steve, did you ever play hockey?
Yeah, as a Canadian, if you don't play hockey, your gear's on the front porch and you're out. So I always skated. I didn't play much organized hockey because I played soccer all year round, but we played a lot after school. Back then, though, the rinks, you didn't have to be in a rink. All the waterways would freeze. Now it's not so easy now to get out there, but back then you could always get a pickup game.
Any other questions? Not, I just want to conclude by thanking Steve Christie for making this an extra special effort to come here today, sharing this wonderful painting. And to Tim and Betsy and Dave, thank you for permitting this all to happen today in front of this group of interesting audience. So, to Steve Christie, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. All we needed was my dog. All we missed was my dog in the fire.
That's right.